Greetings, pen pals. My, what could we possibly have hidden in here? I wonder what it could be. Well, that's kind of a silly question. I know you know what's in here because you've seen the title of the video. This, my friends, is a Pilot Custom Urushi in Vermilion. Now, I don't have what's sometimes referred to as a Grail pen or Grail pens. What I do have are pens that I just don't have, and for lots of reasons. One, maybe they're very, very expensive. Maybe they're just really, really hard to get. I'll put a Connet bulk filler in that category. I don't have one of those. I would like to get one of those, but they're not making them, and they haven't made them for a year or two. One pen that I've always kind of wanted, but I was very, very picky about getting it, was a Pilot Custom Urushi. I only wanted the Vermilion one. I was particularly picky about nib size. I also was very particular about price. There was a price I was willing to pay for it and no higher. And I also really, really preferred to actually buy a pre-owned pen from a reliable source. Because I didn't want to have to run the risk if I just bought it from a retailer or a pen that's never been used. You could kind of get a dud from the manufacturer, and then you got to go through the whole return process and the warranty process, etc. I know that's sort of counterintuitive, but if it's a reliable pen user that you trust, that says the pen writes well, I kind of like that for a higher end pen than sometimes having to go through the rigmarole of just getting one that came off the factory and then turns out not to be the best. So put all those together. It just took me a while to get one of these, and I finally did, and I got it a few months ago. It's made a few brief appearances in a couple of my pen review of the Daily Pens video, but I haven't done an in-depth review. And I was joking that's because I needed a new thesaurus to come up with some adjectives. I'm not kidding about that, really. Just to put it in perspective, I'm a huge fan of Pilot pens. Pilot is probably my single favorite manufacturer. Just to give you an idea of how much I like Pilot pens, I'm going to show you something here. This case has some of my Pilot pen collection. These are only Pilot pens in this pen roll. Yeah, so like I said, as you can see, I'm a fan. Pilot is a very, very, hold a special place for me. I really, really like what they make. I really like their pens. For quite a while, my favorite Pilot pen, probably, if I had to pick one, for lots of reasons, would have been this Pilot Bamboo. And I've said that on a few other videos. It's a really great pen. They don't make anymore. Writes well, has a great nib, checks all the boxes, has a very unique shape and style, etc. And I always thought it'd be very hard for this pen to get dethroned. Well, it's sort of happened. I really feel this Custom Urushi. I'll cut to the chase here. This is my favorite Pilot pen now, and it's certainly one of my favorite pens, period, now, for a lot of reasons, which we'll get into. You have phenomenal materials, exceptional workmanship, really great aesthetics, feels great in the hand. It's a big pen, so it's got some really nice heft and size to it, which I really like. And it has a very large, wet nib, and it writes extraordinarily well. So we'll get into all those details. But in terms of our regular old review, let's get right to it, and there's no time like the present for that. Okay, the Pilot Custom Urushi is a big pen. Here it is compared to a Lamy Safari and a Pilot Metropolitan, and as you can see, it positively dwarfs these pens both in length and girth. Also has some weight to it, weighs in at 45 grams. The materials here are ebonite, metals, some acrylics, And of course the ebonite is covered in the Urushi lacquer. Now the Urushi lacquer is a hand-done process, and it's coated with this lacquer, which is an extract from a plant that grows in Asia. And Urushi's been used for things like bowls and decorative ware. Fountain pens are sort of those Japanese boxes and things that you've seen around. So it's by no means only used for fountain pens. It is extremely hard and durable, while yet retaining a very kind of warm feeling. So at first glance, this might just look like any old acrylic or resin pen, but it is far from that. In terms of the parts of the pen, has a very sort of elaborate cap band, multi-tier, multi-material cap band that says Custom Urushi. It's got a bunch of stars, and then it says Pilot Made in Japan. The clip is a very large version of the Pilot tapered clip with the very large ball at the end. That works really well and is quite effective. The finial on the top of the cap is a resin finial with a nice sort of inset metal ring and a disc in there. And the back finial is a plain black finial with a gold tone trim ring. All in all, I think the aesthetics on this pen look great. Really, really well balanced. Very, very, very classy looking. It is a screw to uncap pen. It takes just under 2 full turns to unscrew it. Now, let's talk about posting. So this is clearly a big pen. You could use it unposted. Personally, I'm such a huge fan of posting. I sometimes go out of my way to post pens. But personally, I think the issue with not posting this pen is I just think it looks not great unposted because it's so girthy. I think the proportions look off when it's unposted. So I just think it looks right when it's posted. Now granted, it's big, it's heavy, etc. when it's posted, so you might not like it that way. But it does post, it posts well, and if you're at all concerned about marring the Urushi lacquer, you needn't be. So unlike the Pilot Custom 845, which is the sort of smaller version of this pen, that has sort of felt lining inside the cap to protect the Urushi lacquer. This has a different sort of system. The way the inside of the cap and this ring here is engineered, it's engineered to post in such a way that the inside of the cap never actually touches the lacquer. So even though you do have, it's acrylic on Urushi, there isn't any metal part. There isn't any metal parts in there that would touch the Urushi anyway, but even then the acrylic is not touching the lacquer, it's just touching this, the acrylic isn't touching the Urushi, it's just touching this part here and resting on that trim ring. So it is a pretty nice system, and like I said, it does post, and it posts solidly. And again, I'm a fan of posting. Now, you may find it back weighted, etc., but I just think, given the girth of the pen, I think it looks kind of odd and stubby unposted. But that's just my personal view from the aesthetics perspective. The section is not huge, but it's comfortable. It tapers and has a bit of flare at the end. It has a nice little trim ring there, and these threads are relatively tight and unobtrusive. Now we get to the nib. Oh boy, what do we say about the nib? This is a size 30 nib in 18 karat gold. So it's a two-tone nib. It says Pilot, 18 karat, 750, has a 30 for size 30 and an M for medium. And then like all gold Pilot nibs, it has a date code in the small letters at the bottom as to when the nib was manufactured. It does have an uninspiring plastic feed, but one nice feature it has on a lot of higher end Pilot pens, and it's a particularly important feature on a really big pen like this. It has a little feeder hole at the bottom of the section, at the bottom of the feed, and you can draw up ink through that hole. In other words, you don't have to dunk all of this into the ink well to fill it, you only have to dunk it up to that hole to draw ink up, which is very important considering how big this is. And if you have you'd have to have a lot of ink in your ink bottle. There are some ink bottles that if they're even halfway full, you still wouldn't even be able to fill this pen up if you had to fill it, if you had to dunk it all the way to there. So that's actually a very useful feature. It also makes it a little neater. You don't have as big a mess to wipe off if you had to dunk this whole feed and section and nib into ink. So that actually works quite well. So that's the outside features of this pen. In terms of filling mechanism, it is cartridge converter. What's nice is it will take pretty much any Pilot converter, including the Con 70, which is, as far as I'm concerned, the only Pilot converter that works properly. Again, nothing earth-shattering here. You have steel, and then you have the mechanism whereby the converter plugs in. Again, nothing much to that. Of course, you could use Pilot cartridges if you so chose. You're probably wondering if we could compare the nib to something else. So let's compare the nib to a few other pens. I think the nib comparison in this particular case is somewhat worthwhile. So here we're going to first compare it to the Pilot Custom 823, which is the like the normal sort of big nib. It's what Pilot calls a size 15 nib. Let's zoom in here. So as you can see, this nib is way bigger. Let's compare it to another pen with a very big nib. So here it is compared to a Montblanc 149, and as you can see, it is even a tiny bit wider. It's about the same length, but it's a tiny bit wider than the nib on the Montblanc 149. So we're talking about a big nib here. In terms of the external dimensions, it might be a good exercise to compare it to several other Pilot pens, and let's do that right now. Okay, we're going to compare it to some other Pilot pens, but one thing that should be noted is that none of these other pens are small pens by any means. These are all full-size pens, and in some cases, like the Bamboo, are actually quite large. It's just that this pen is really a big, nice, oversized pen and really kind of dwarfs them. But in any case, this is our Pilot Custom Urushi, obviously. Here we have a Pilot Custom 823. This is the Pilot Bamboo that I showed you earlier. Again, much bigger than the 823, but again, it's still much smaller than the Custom Urushi. And this is the Pilot Falcon, which is a very average size, by no means a small or an undersized pen, but here it is smaller than any of these guys, and certainly much smaller than the Urushi. So both in girth and in length, by any means, this is a large pen. Okay, so we've been spending a lot of time talking about size, and of course size does matter in a review like this, but let's talk about how a pen writes, because after all, pens were meant to write. I know you really want to see this guy write, and I'm going to show you that right now. Okay folks, what I'm writing with here today is a Pilot Custom Urushi. And this has an 18 karat number 30, but again, that's a Pilot size, proprietary Pilot scale nib in medium. This just writes amazing. It flows like butter. It is smooth. And it just is an absolute pleasure to write with. I would say is above average wetness. It's definitely a wetter pen. It just flows wonderfully, has a great feel to it, etc. And I would say it's a solid Japanese medium. Obviously going to be finer than a Western medium. But I'd say it's, it's what you would expect a Japanese medium nib to write with, so it is definitely accurately accurately named. In terms of reverse writing, it's actually quite smooth and quite serviceable, but as you can see, it's only a marginal amount finer than writing the normal way. But it's a beautiful nib, it's a great writing nib, it's a wet nib, and I really, really like it a lot. Speaking of liking it a lot, one thing that I really would like a lot is if you folks could all please like, comment, share, and subscribe. That would all be very much appreciated by me. Well, I've pretty much said what I want to say about this pen. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of Pilot pens. This is probably my new favorite Pilot pen. It's certainly one of my favorite pens now, period. It was worth the wait. I've been looking to pick one of these up for quite a while. But like I said, I wanted to get it on my specific terms. And I finally found a circumstance where I checked all my boxes, and that's how I was able to get it a few months ago. I have been using it quite a bit over those few months, so this is not like a first impressions type review. This is one I've been marinating on for quite some time. So I think that'll just about do it for this absolutely fantastic pen. But let's talk about this quite nice ink for a minute, shall we? Okay, this ink is Iroshizuku Momiji, which is basically Iroshizuku's red ink. They don't have multiple shades of red and stuff, like they have multiple greens and they have certainly have a lot of blues and stuff like that, but they don't have multiple reds. This is pretty much it. They do have a pink, which I'll show you in a minute. But this is their red. It definitely does lean a little bit on the pink side. Certainly it doesn't bend towards the orange side, which a lot of reds do. But it's a really pretty ink. It does have some color variation, etc. So let's look at the color card for this guy. So here is the Iroshizuku Momiji. As you can see on certain papers, and if you glob it on enough, there's definitely a gold sheen to it, which looks quite nice. This is a pinkish version. This is Iroshizuku Tsuji, which is a much pinker version from Iroshizuku. Let's compare it to some other reds. So this is compared to one of my favorite reds, Birmingham Fred Rogers cardigan red. This is Pen BBS Chengdu red, which is a really, really nice red, really nice red actually. With quite a bit of gold sheen in it. And here's just a plain old Waterman Audacious red, which is about as basic a red as they come. So like I said, this is Iroshizuku's entry in the red ink game, and it is a pretty nice one. That's what it looks like on this Rhodia paper. Let's take a quick look at what it looks like on Tomoe River paper, shall we? All right, what we're writing with here is Iroshizuku Momiji. And looks very nice on this Tomoe River paper. Looks a little pinker actually on the Tomoe River paper, at least to me. But again, it is nice, and like I said, you do pick up some color variation, a little bit of gold sheen. All in all, a really great ink to go with a really great pen. Again, this was a fantastic pen. I'm really happy with it. I hope I conveyed to all you folks how much I really like this pen and what a great pen it is. I certainly hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you liked watching it, because I sure enjoyed making it. And as always, until we see each other again, have a great day. Bye-bye.